Hello and welcome. I'm Jenny Hall. Thanks for joining me today on Wednesday, August the 8th. And today I'm going to be demonstrating the no-line watercolor technique by request. Hey Joanne, thanks for stopping in. So first I'm going to show some artwork for Trip that has been building up at school. He's now done with his summer school and they sent home an entire treasure trove of artwork that I'm just really excited when I saw it. I just couldn't stand it. Here is an alligator, and it looks like all of their theme is for animals over the summer camp. Animals at the zoo. And that's so cute. I love it. This little pipe cleaners and looks like a tongue depressor. Isn't that the cutest? And this is a flamingo that is created from some straws and a paper plate. And here's the back where they attach them with tape. And this really cute feather. Teachers are so creative. And this one's really interesting. It's a snake, but they've cut it in like a spiral form, and then it can be picked up like this, but not only that, they kind of had it a little bit wonky to where, you know, a snake is not all, see, it's colored on both sides. So a snake is not always in an ideal position. It's just the cutest. I love it. He'll look back on these things when he's older and know that I saved him, and it'll make him so happy, I hope. So here is his hand as a giraffe, and he's put his little smiley face on the giraffe, and this is the giraffe's nose. So cute. And that's his hand print there. And he's made this really, really cute panda bear, and it must have been a fork or something that he used to create the hair texture. I love this one. So cute. Hi, Fran. Thanks for stopping in. And this is just, so I guess it's supposed to be a grizzly bear. I'm not sure what kind of bear. And he didn't complete the face on it, but that's okay. It's got a lot of texture that I can see that he's created here with the paint. And he used a lot of paint there. Nope, there's nothing on the back. And this is the last piece from Trip. This is from his summer school. Good morning, Betty. And this one is a duck, and he's given it some nice little feathers here. This is some artwork for Trip that he brought home at his last day of school, which was last Friday. He's off of summer school now. Both of the boys start summer camp this coming Monday for 2 weeks, and then they're off a week, and then they go into school again, which is good because we like it spaced out to where they don't lose. That way they're able to retain, if I can get the words out right. Their learning retention is better. How about that? Thanks, Betty. I think he did a great job. He just really did so much fun. I love this one. This is so cute. I'm sure he had help cutting it out because I've seen Trip cut, and this is not him. This is not his cutting job here. But I wanted to show those. And I do have a piece of Happy Mail. This is, the swap cards I showed last week. This is from Deborah, and she has used a lot of different products here. We've got the wood grain folder and the subtle folder. There's lots of physical and visual texture here. And then we've got a lot of stuff going on here too. This is really nice. This almost has a little bit of a vintage look, but not quite. It's very well executed. Really nice job, Deborah. You are awesome. So I want to share a few things before we start our project, and we'll be going into a really great technique today. Hi, Karen. Thanks for stopping in. This is my host code for the month of August. So if you're shopping on my website, which is jennyhalldesign.com, then if your order is $149 or less, then please apply this host code so that I can send you a nice gift. And if you have never shopped with me before, then I usually send out a little something extra just to introduce you to me. So please use the host code if you can. If you can't, that's okay. I'm still very grateful for your order. The holiday catalogs are flying through the mail all over the world. If you are in need of a demonstrator and you would like to work with me, then I'd love to send you a catalog. Just have to let me know your address and your information, which you can send to me by email. My email is jennystampsup@gmail.com. So just reach out with me one way or another and we'll work together to get you a catalog just as soon as we've got them available. I plan for them to be headed out in the mail the end of the week before the end of August. the end of the third week of August. Let's put it that way. We have a really, really great promotion going on right now at Stampin' Up. And this is the Color Your Season limited time products, which includes the Blended Seasons stamp set or bundle and the Stitch Seasons dies. And you can also get the new set of watercolor pencils. So those are available right now. In fact, our project today is going to be demonstrating no-line watercolor with this large floral image here from the Blended Seasons. And if you like that, then there's so many possibilities. In fact, we are going to all month long feature this one, and I'm going to do 4 different seasons. So today is going to be the spring season, and then next week I'll do another season, and we've got 4 Wednesdays in order to get all 4 seasons in. So we're going to start off with spring today. But this is a fantastic, wonderful product that I'm really excited to be sharing with you guys. So it's called Color Your Season. And we've still got our promotion happening with Paper Pumpkin. If you are a new first-time subscriber, and that means that you are not working with your Stampin' Up account. Paper Pumpkin is independent from Stampin' Up as far as the ordering and the subscription setup. So if you're new to Paper Pumpkin, this is a wonderful time to get half off of your first month. And if you have been a subscriber in the past and you want to become a subscriber again, then you'll have to use a different email in order to do your subscribing, but it can be done. So if you need more information on Paper Pumpkin, then let me know, because I would love to add you to my subscriber list and send you all those wonderful tutorials from Paper Pumpkin that I create every month. During the month of August, we have bonus days, and I'm so excited. I have already earned bonus days coupons on my pre-order, and I think that's so cool that Stampin' Up! Allows us to get the pre-order the month before the holiday catalog goes live, but we're also earning our bonus days coupons for the products that we're ordering. So you can order it. You do not have to be a demonstrator to earn bonus days. If you're a demonstrator, you also get to earn your bonus days. And basically what it means is that for every $50 in product, then you are earning a $5 coupon that you can redeem in September. It's really just that easy. And I love having coupon codes. Who doesn't love a coupon? Next month, we will be having another promotion that is called Dashing Along. And that is for every $250 in sales, you can get a free pack of paper. And this is a really nice pack of paper. It's called Dashing Along, and it has traditional images that can be used not only with this new product here, which is a little sneaky peek, but you can get it and use it with just about anything you like. So much fun. I love all of the little incentives that Stampin' Up! Is offering for us. So I want this tutorial is going to take a little bit longer today, so I want to get right into it. So that's why I'm talking a little bit faster. So we're going to do no line watercoloring. And before we begin, I want to kind of go over a few of the different basics for watercoloring. So it's not necessary, but it's a really good idea to have yourself a hard surface that you can anchor your watercolor paper to. So I have a couple of different options for surface and for anchoring to share with you. Of course, I like to use Stampin' Up products, and I stand by them. By what I use, I show you exactly what I do when I'm with you on camera and off camera. So the first option is a very heavy-duty piece of chipboard. Now this piece of chipboard it came from a pack of designer series paper. The paper packs that I get from Stampin' Up oftentimes have a really hard board, and chipboard can be anything from a cereal box or any kind of a packaging that needs something really firm to hold it in place. And so this is a really great option that usually doesn't cost anything at all. So this is a heavy-duty chipboard. The next thing I would suggest is to find some sort of a surface around the house that you can use as a hardboard. And this is a bamboo cutting board that I picked up from, let's see, the name of the store it's Ollie's Bargains, and I think it was $2. This is a really very affordable way to have an all-purpose hardboard that is going to work for a lot of different things. I primarily use this little board for heat embossing, and I think you've seen me do that here with you in a live video. So what you would do is use this as a hard surface, and then you would adhere your watercolor paper to that surface. We'll get to ways to adhere it in just a few moments, but this is going to be a very affordable way that maybe you can repurpose something that's inside your home. If you have an old cutting board that you don't like to use for food anymore, as long as it doesn't smell too much like onions and garlic, you don't want your project to really smell like too much savory stuff. Good morning, Donna. Thanks for stopping in. So repurpose something if you possibly can. And if that doesn't work out for you, then visit any kind of a bargain store and find some sort of a hard board. And this is bamboo. So the other option is the professional option, and this is an official hardboard panel. It is made from, I guess, recycled. Doesn't tell me exactly what it is, but it looks kind of like how plywood has or MDF has lots of different fibers and they're compressed. Well, the hardboard that is made for an artist, it does have a finish to it. It's not a coating per se, but it's a very smooth finish. So with the three different options that I've shown you, you can purchase a hardboard, you can choose to repurpose something or go the bargain store route and get something really affordable, or totally recycle something such as chipboard that may already be in your home. So the point is to find what works best for you, and the chipboard is going to absorb water. That's the only downside. These other two items are not going to absorb water as quickly, and the hardboard will hardly absorb any loose water at all. So whatever works best for your crafting is what my suggestions are. But when we're talking about watercolor, and we're going to do a watercolor technique today, then I think it's important to set yourself up for success and not have your paper turn into a rainbow arc that's flooding off your work surface. So I'm going to probably use the hardboard today just because it's easy for me to move around. And to adhere to that hardboard, I borrowed from my husband's tool kit some frog tape, and I also have some washi tape that is from Stampin' Up. So this is what frog tape looks like. It is kind of like the blue painter's tape from, I think 3M makes it. I'm not really sure. Donna is sharing a tip that she puts foil over chipboard for heat embossing. That's a great tip, Donna. Thank you for sharing it. What I found is a little bit different about frog tape, and it comes off like masking tape, is that it has a little bit of a, let's have a look at the front here. It's called paint block technology, and I think what they're trying to say is that if you place it down and then activate it by kind of pushing it in place, then the water is not going to sink underneath the very edge of the tape. That's what frog tape is advertising. So it's professional painter's tape is what they're calling it. I find that if I use washi tape, I'm okay with it. So I'm going to use some washi tape today. And this is from Stampin' Up. We have it in a, let's see, I think there are 5 pieces. I think it's called Pick a Pattern. And this is a nice wide tape that I'm able to make sure that I get partially on my paper and partially on my hardboard. And that's why I chose this wide roll, because it's important for my work to want to stay put. I don't want it to run away from home, per se. So we're going to recreate the watercoloring that is in this card here. I had several different requests for demonstrating the technique of no-line watercolor, and I had another request to kind of share what my tips are for coloring this particular card. And this was such a fun card and really remarkably easy, so much more. Donna is also sharing that she heard frog tape isn't as sticky as painter's tape, so it doesn't rip your paper. Yes, but I use washi tape and I try to deactivate some of the adhesive just like frog tape and just like blue painter's tape. And I'll share my ways of doing that whenever we adhere it. But yes, that is a very good point, Donna. And I'll share exactly how I deactivate some of the adhesive that's on the back of the washi tape. So we're going to use the same colors that is in this particular project here. I'll give you a closer look at it. And this is called a double Z-fold box card, and I used the Blended Seasons bundle in order to create it. This is the image that I stamped, and this is the sentiment that I used. And you can see that it folds flat. We're not going to recreate this card. We're going to just recreate the coloring technique that I used for the background panels. So this is a really fun technique. The actual pattern for creating this type of card was made from a tutorial from Addictive Designs. So if you're interested in how to create this type of fold, then if you visit addictivedesigns.com and look for Layering Circles Double Z Fold Box Card, then you will be able to find the tutorial and the pattern that it's available for purchase. So I'm not allowed to duplicate something that is a tutorial that's purchased. That's why I can't re-demonstrate this card, but I'm using this as an example for the coloring. So the coloring on the flowers is one color on the petals, and then it's going to be Blackberry Bliss, and we have Mango Melody as the center of the flowers. And then I've used 2 different greens on the actual leaves, and that is Soft Seafoam and Granny Apple Green. So we're going to work to duplicate this type of coloring, which is not as hard as it looks. And so if you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask. And if I miss your question, then I apologize, and I will go back and check and reply to the comments after the video has finished. So let's get creating. And I'm going to use my stamp apparatus today because I'm going to stamp on watercolor paper. Now, on watercolor paper, you may know that there are two different sides. There is a bumpy side and there is a smooth side. So I'm not sure if you can really see those bumps, but the bumps are great texture. They allow for your fluid to rest in different places. It's a very natural look. For stamping purposes, I prefer to have the flat side. It's just a little more flat than the other side is. And I like it because it takes more of my stamped lines and it keeps a nice stamped image, basically. So let's see exactly where I want to position this very large floral image. I'm just going to put it in the middle because I'm going to die cut this later. So for now, we're going to create the no line look by stamping with a neutral color, and it's going to be smoky slate. So I guess I should really point out that I'm using smoky slate because here's what my color palette looks like. So we've got this wonderful rich tone of Blackberry Bliss, a warm rich color of Mango Melody. This is a warm yellow green, it's a fly, and then a lighter version with soft seafoam. So I see a lot of warmth here within this color palette. And I have two grays in my Stampin' Up ink collection that will work for this. And one of them is gray granite and the other one is smoky slate. And smoky slate is definitely a different color from gray granite. Let me grab it real quick. One is a warm gray and the other is a cool gray. So the cool gray will kind of work as more of a shadow against some of these colors. And there's not a right or wrong way. You could even use another color. And here's one of my favorites for no line watercoloring is the new Petal Pink. Petal Pink also works fantastically, but I'm not sure how well it's going to show up on camera. So I wanted to use one of the grays instead, and I thought that would work a little bit better. So I'll set that aside. But for the purposes of the no line coloring, I'm going to use smoky slate today. So I want to have a scratch piece of paper handy so that I can stamp off once, and I'll make sure that I position it to where it's actually not going to get on my watercolor paper. Ink up and then add over here. This is my image that is just a toss away, and then I'm going to take the remainder of the ink. And watercolor paper is it can stand up to a lot of fluid. So we are going to give this a moment to let that ink transfer, and we got it good. We got enough ink to where there's lots of lines to follow. Now the principle of no line watercoloring is that we have some stamped lines to follow, but we are not going to have them show up in the finished project. So in order for those lines to kind of disappear into the coloring, then we're going to need to really use our colors to their best advantage. Okay, so now I've got my hardboard here, and I'm going to, because we're going to use quite a bit of fluid on this piece of paper, then I'm going to use the washi tape to adhere it down. So I use a length and I place it on the inside of my arm. And I know it might sound a little bit silly, but I place it here and then I remove it a couple of times, and it takes the tackiness of the tape away. And so that way, whenever I'm able to remove this from my hardboard, if I remove it at a very sharp angle, then it won't damage my paper. And there's sometimes when you want to color the whole panel and feature the entire panel on a project. This happens to be a piece that's going to be die cut, so I would be okay either way. But just taking some of that stickiness away is enough for me. And I'm going to make sure that I flatten my paper. And it's just that simple. So my washi tape worked out really good. For coloring, I'm going to be using an aqua painter, and I have a paper towel here. And in between applications of color, I will be dabbing off my brush on this paper towel. But there's going to be lots of different tips and hints that I use along the way. Hi, Anne-Marie. Thanks for taking the time to stop in with us. Okay, so let's get started. I hope you guys are excited because I'm really excited to share this. I'm going to use my stamp pads and I'm going to push and apply pressure from the back side in order to bring some of that ink up into the lid of my stamp pad. Another option would be to use a color palette or a clear acrylic block and drop in some ink refills, or to dab the edge of the stamp pad on it. I tend to like just using the nice, easy, clean way of doing that with my stamp pad lids. So the very first thing that I want to make sure that I do is to work on petals. We'll do the flower petals first, but to do the petals that do not touch each other. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because as I add color to another neighboring image, if the water touches, then the water is going to it's like dropping food coloring into a droplet and then joining it to another droplet. It's going to spread out. And we want to use that to our advantage. When I created this project, a lot of the color is created by spreading it out. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. But in order to have success with this, then we need to make sure that the water stays contained. It has to stay in one place. So the best way to do that is to work in alternatives. So we could say this is petal number 1, this is petal number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. So we're going to do petal 1, skip this one, and then do this petal. And this one doesn't actually touch, so we can go over here. And it's the same principle for the leaves. We want to make sure that the flower is dry before we even touch anything with these leaves. So when you're using heat embossing, then the heat embossing kind of traps every single stamped line in place. And you do not have to worry where the watercolor ends up because the heat embossing will keep it in place. That's not the case with today's technique. Today's technique is all about strategy. We're going to strategically wet one particular place at a time. So I have tap water in my aqua painter, and first I'm going to give some water. Oops, it looks like it's got a little residual blue. Let's see if I can get that blue off. The last thing I colored must have been blue. There we go. So I have some tap water here, and I'm going to wet this entire petal. I'm not going to wet down here in the center of the flower. I'm going to stop right before then and make sure that I get all the way up onto that stamped leaf, the stamped line of the leaf. Okay, and I'm giving a generous amount of water here. I'm not flooding it, but I want this entire leaf to be wet. Hi, Kathy. Thanks for stopping in today. So first thing I'm going to do is pick up not too strong and not too light of the Blackberry Bliss, and I'm going to touch the water that's down here towards the bottom, and let's take a look and watch what happens. So I'm just touching it, and it's the water that's already there is starting to spread it out, and now I'm going to touch it again with applying some pressure to my aqua painter. Not a lot, but a little bit. And look at that, magic. So now I'm going to get that extra color off my brush and just kind of move this a little bit. I want to move some things around, and I would like to preserve some of the white space that is in the particular petal. Now you can pull the color back by dabbing off the brush and just working it back towards this bottom area. But we've gone all the way up to this stamped line. If we want to make some white spots, then just keep dabbing the color away with no pressure. And then we're going to go back in and add more concentrated color down here into the bottom of the flower petal. I'm not really giving very much pressure, but I'm going to even get more concentrated color. This is Blackberry Bliss. And then work that color up along the side of the stamped line. So by doing this, I'm creating dimension. And I'm also dabbing off as I go, because when I move the color around, I don't want to move around extra color that's on my brush. I want to move around the color that's already in the flower petal. I'm going to keep my lines just as sleek as possible, and then I'm going to allow this to dry. So we'll move on to the next petal that is not touching. So that's going to be, this is number 1, this is number 2, and this is number 3. So we're going to do odd numbers. And by wetting just this petal and not here where it overlaps into the other flower, then I'm going to make sure that I don't let this fluid travel anywhere. We want to keep it right here where it belongs. So I'm going to get some more of that mid-tone, and this time I'm going to give it a good little squeeze as I touch the paper. I'm not squeezing too much, but the fluid that comes off of the water brush is going to take that paint with it and just kind of go out. And then I'll dab off and get that extra color off. Soften that line by kind of a back and forth motion, very gently. And then bring the color around the sides of the petal. So now you can see that it's creating a little bit of dimension. That's whenever I can go back and get the really concentrated Blackberry Bliss and go back into that very bottom area, and then just very easily working it into those deep areas of the petal and then out into where the contours are going to be. And we will come back to this particular petal. We'll do some more work on it. We're going to work on the opposites here. And again, if you have any questions as we go, feel free to ask, and I'll try to my best to answer. Now, as I add the fluid, I'm skipping a few places and making sure that the entire leaf is not covered. And we're going to see how that does a little bit differently. So this is the same technique every time. First, I'm giving that diluted color, and then working that diluted color out a little bit into the petal. So even when the sunshine hits a petal, a flower petal or a leaf, it it has the remnants of some color to it, but it doesn't have as deep a shade. And that's what we're creating here, is the shading. So as this image starts to shape up, then maybe you can see how it's working out. So what I notice right now, and thank you, Donna, what I notice is not the gray line of the stamping, but I do notice that the color is really intense and that the gray stamped line is just more of a contour of the stamped image. Thank you, Anne Marie. I always hope that the way that I'm explaining something is easy to understand. All right, so more of this really deep color. And as I add the deep color, I'm trying to keep in mind what the placement of this petal is in reference to the petal that's next to it. So this petal here that's kind of hiding behind both of those flower petals is going to be in a more shaded, shadowy area. And so it's going to be much darker than this, which is really fine. I'm going to work on this one here now. So I'm going to go at a much faster pace so that you can see what this looks like. I'm going to add some of that color, and I'm applying the pressure. Get some darker color. And I do try to keep as much white area as I can just to keep things looking more natural. Now I'm softening that line that I just added. And I keep dabbing off on purpose because I don't want the residual ink that is on the end of the brush to go everywhere. I want it to plan where it goes. So after I apply it, then sometimes it may look a little grainy until it's softened out. You bet, Betty. We'll catch you later. And there's also a drawn contour here that's in this leaf. And you can see as these petals are drying up that there's some white space that is kept its integrity. And that's totally intentional. We want that white space to be very prominent. Okay, so this leaf here, I'm going to really flood him over with water, a whole lot. And we're going to watch what happens when I use a really concentrated Blackberry Bliss. See how it takes it and just blows it out. So I'm just going to help that color. I'm going to encourage it a little bit to move around. But I like how it's naturally going into some areas and staying away from other areas. But when you use more fluid, then of course the danger is that it takes longer for your project to dry. So now I'm going back with that deeper color. And this is going to be a more realistic looking petal here. So we've got probably enough of them here where this is going to overlap. This one may be safe to color now, so I'm going to make sure I leave some of this area white. Grab some of the Blackberry Bliss. I apologize if I'm repeating myself too much. I just want to make sure that you're able to follow along with exactly what I'm doing. So the Blackberry Bliss was a really ideal color to choose for this particular technique because whenever it's diluted, it still looks really pretty and it doesn't look exactly the same. Okay, and once my brush has got most of that color off, then I'll go back here and soften that area that got close to the white, and then I can again push the color back into the areas to to where it looks more like natural contours. And then we'll move on to another flower before we start working on some of the other areas. I'd like to color this entire piece with you today. And the problem is that it takes a while to do coloring, and I don't want to monopolize your entire day. So I'm going to go a bit more quickly. Thanks, Pam. And once I have that color, I'm going to just drop in some darker color at the base of the flower petal. So this technique has intimidated so many crafters that are so talented, and they really make some fantastic projects. But what is it about watercoloring in general, and specifically no-line watercoloring, that intimidates you? I would like for you to tell me so that I can answer your questions right here. If you have any trepidation about it, let's figure out what it is, and let's work this out. So here is more concentrated color. I can see that there could be a white streak here. So I'm going to leave a white streak. So the wet on wet watercolor technique is what makes this particular way of coloring possible. This is what makes being able to let the ink and the water do its job together. Softening up that line, and I'm leaving that highlight on the leaf. And this is touching both of those, so I should have done this leaf here, but I didn't. Okay, so what I can do while I'm waiting this to dry just a little bit longer, just a few minutes longer, I'm going to work on the buds of the flower. And this is the way that I typically work just when I'm painting on my own. Now this is not the wet on wet technique for the tiny little flower buds. This is just straight up putting color onto the paper. And that's because this is such a small area that if I did wet on wet, I believe it would spread out really, really far. And I'm not wanting that look. And the buds of flowers are often a different color. They have a lot of intensity to them. So the gray stamped line is hardly visible at all. And you can play with color placement and figure it out a couple of different ways. Hi, Nicola. Okay, so those are our little buds. And this area, flower number 1, has probably dried back enough for us to be able to work the alternative petals. So I'm going to make sure that I've got all that color off of my brush. And I'll start here. And we're going to do just like we did before, but I'm going to be very careful with the areas that are up against the other petals, because if there's still some wet areas, I don't want them to absorb my color for this petal, because the amount of color that I'm adding to the image is meant just to be used here on this petal. So this is where we can add a whole lot of contours. And hi there, hi Sharon. And if there's a leaf or a petal that is laying underneath another one, then this is where we're going to really make it look a lot more shadowed. We're going to shade it more. So each time I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm adding some water. So we've got another petal over here. I'm adding just clear water from my brush, and it may have a little bit of residual Blackberry Bliss on it, but I'm dampening the image all the way up to that stamped line, and then adding color with a diluted color of Blackberry Bliss, and then going in for the really rich color that's not diluted. And then this is going to allow me to really sink in those depths, those contours and depths. Now I can see that I've got a little bit of leakage into my neighbor because it didn't dry quite enough. So I'll be very careful as I place the color on this particular petal. But I want to be able to see the contours. I don't want it to be as if there's just a really, really dark leaf. I want to be able to see that this leaf is laying underneath its neighbor. The flower petal, sorry, I keep calling it a leaf. All right, so let's work our way down a little bit more. This one feels dry enough. Yeah, I think we're okay. Giving a lot of water to this big leaf here. And then we're going to watch that watercolor magic. And it just kind of spreads itself out. Light pressure on the aqua painter barrel. And then I'm taking the excess off. And then just helping that color to move around a little bit. So now the color is going to have a vehicle when you use wet on wet watercolor technique. And when you use the no line watercoloring, then it allows you to get the image to really stand out without having to look at the stamped lines. Now there are wonderful times when you want those stamped lines to be big and bold. Let's think of ways like gold embossing, or the image that I featured on my blog, I think it was last week, where I used the Stamparatus to trap in the color on that really large image called Peaceful Place, and then watercolored on top of it, just a very simple, no hassle watercolor. Okay, so I'm going to soften and move around what's already on the image. And this is just really just that simple. Being able to control the amount of fluid that's on your image is probably one of the practices that is going to be more successful. If you just like practice, stamp out a bunch of things and practice it and try to see exactly how much you can work in, how much fluid you can add. And this one doesn't have any fluid first. So I'm adding the color down. And that color is going to start soaking directly in. And I won't be able to really move it very much. So it's going to give a different type of brushstroke look. So if you're just joining, we are working with a no-line watercolor look today. We've stamped our image in smoky slate. We popped it in the Stamparatus, and that way we stamped off once. And then we're working with a lighter shade of gray if we stamp off first. And now we're using the wet on wet watercolor technique. Blackberry Bliss gets a little bit grainy, I guess you'd say. Hi, Arlene. Thank you so much. Thank you, Fran. And if I'm talking too much, I apologize, because I don't want you guys to miss out on, if you're just joining, I want you to be able to tell what we're doing. So I'm softening that line. but I'm keeping the integrity of the white space. Now this petal looks like it's kind of got a lot of curve to it, so I'm going to add a darker color here. And again, those stamped lines tend to disappear. Now, if you're very conscious of the stamped lines, then the thing to do is to go back over them with a marker or with the tip of your brush, and that's going to help those stamped lines just kind of melt away. So once I add that darker color, then I'm dabbing off so that I can just help it move out a little bit. Okay, and I'm gonna wait for this one because I know this little leaf, this little guy right here, he's going to absorb all of his neighbor's color. So now I'm gonna go back in after, since these are all colored, then I'm gonna use this really, really concentrated Blackberry Bliss and go right in those corner lines with the very tip of my aqua painter. And I'm gonna enhance the edges and then soften it out just a tad, because I don't want it to look like a solid line. I want it to look like it's part of the natural contours of the flower. And I'm going to do that on all of these really pretty drawn flower petals, and I'm going to work that color, just the edge of it out. And this is the non-diluted Blackberry Bliss. And it's just going around the edges, and it's really going to cause it to be enhanced. Thanks, Sharon. So this is a tricky area here because it overlaps onto another petal, but I want this flower petal to get enough of attention as well. So everything I'm doing, I'm going back and softening it. Sometimes it needs a little extra color to soften it if it's soaked in really quickly. So these really deep areas of the petal, that's where it's going to benefit the most from the color. So we first got our base layer down, and now we're going in and adding more and enhancing those shadow marks where the natural contour would appear. So tell me, how well do you see those gray stamped lines now that we've got so much color worked into it? They're starting to kind of fade into the background, aren't they? And then there's this particular line that is on the stamp, and I'm just using some of the dark concentrated ink and following that line just to give it the look that the artist created whenever they made the stamped image. It just helps the eye to travel out a little bit. And then this person, this little guy over here, can use just a little more shading. And then I'll soften the line, the edge line here. So it keeps the highlight, but it's not a flat image anymore. Okay, so we're gonna get this last petal here finished and work our way around. Now, as I'm adding the color to these other two flowers, I'll probably try to go much more quickly. That way our tutorial is not going to go on for infinity. Hi, Mary. Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear how it comes out for you. Please make sure that you tag me or share. You can share it on my page here on Facebook, or you can tag me on your own page, and I would love to see how the technique works out for you. So I'm going a little faster now. And now that I've got all of them colored, then I'll be going back in and adding that concentrated, the undiluted Blackberry Bliss. dab off and then work it around. So I hope that we are taking the mystery out of doing no line watercoloring. And then coming up along the edge here of where the natural line would be of the flower. Thank you, Mary. Sometimes I feel like I talk a little bit too much when I'm explaining things. And, but it's because I want you to be able to understand. And then I'm going to add a little bit more here because this is a strangely shaped flower petal. So I'm doing the no line watercoloring with Blended Seasons, and Blended Seasons is one of our stamp sets with dies that is limited time only. And you can see the possibilities with this particular stamp set. If you have not yet ordered it, then what are you waiting for? This is an absolutely wonderful bundle to work with. And because it's limited time only, then it's not going to be around forever. So I do hope that you get and are able to work with it. Thank you, Anne-Marie. So I'm trying to move along faster. Get some of that really, really dark stuff. And then by dabbing off some of that color that's left on the brush, it allows me to move this around. And I can't stress how important that is. That's probably the #1 way to not get the image to look the way you might have it in your mind. Okay. So now we'll move on to this guy, and then we will be on to greens. Blackberry Bliss is such a pretty color. We never know, Fran. If this is really popular, then it's within Stampin' Up's power to keep it around. And when they say while quantities last, who's to say exactly how much quantity they are going to call that? It's definitely something that every crafter or demonstrator has in mind whenever they see limited time only is, how long will I be able to use this, and how long will it be available for purchase? But I have decided that I don't let that deter me from being able to work with a really great product. And this is a really great product for me. I love it. I'm seeing so many really gorgeous stuff, so much great products with it. It's all over the internet, ideas and inspiration. I even have an online class that's available on my tutorials page that you can get, and it has 6 different tutorials with videos, and they're all different. So I'm going to kind of bring this side of the petal up a little bit. Soften it out. And then we're going to move on to another color for the time being. So we've got some variations going on. What do you guys think? I'm going to bring some of that color up on into the lid of my stamp pad by giving it just a little bit of a squeeze. And now I really need to make sure I get all of that purple out of my aqua painter, because it will definitely look weird if I get it on my leaves. Okay, so keeping the same thought process in mind, we are going to try to avoid any overlapped images. So that means that I will color one leaf, but not its neighbor. The same thing we did with the petals. And I'm giving the whole leaf just a very light coating of water. And then with the soft seafoam, dab it on, give a little squeeze of the barrel, and then it's going to travel around. I can see I still had some purple stuff. Blackberry Bliss is a super strong color. All right, let's try that. Hope it works now. So I'm going to work over here. And the soft seafoam is just going to be a base color. This will be more or less the highlight color that is on the leaf that we're going to see a lot of deeper colors, but we need to have some place for the deeper colors to enhance. So by adding my paintbrush starts taking over my brain. By adding those the base colors, then we're sending those shadows to some place instead of just adding them out of nowhere. Does that make sense? That's the way my brain compensates for it. And then here's a really large leaf. So the soft seafoam is just a foundation. It's not what we're going to let our eyes rest on. Because once we put that granny apple green, then it's going to really change the look. I'm not so much worried about having it spread out like we did on the petals, getting that more artistic look, because once we have our foundation color in place, then we're able to really give it much more depth. So I'm going to do that with Granny Apple Green, and you can see here that there is some diluted green and some really strong green. So I want to work with both of them, but I want to know that there is a distinct difference between the two of them. And this is the way I mean that when I purposely use the light colors of ink, it's going to be on certain places of the leaf. And when I purposely use the undiluted, more concentrated part of the Granny Apple Green, it's going to be on purpose, just like we did for the Blackberry Bliss. So let's get a little bit of the diluted or lighter shade and kind of add it along those drawn lines. And that's going to give us a really good start as to where to add the contours. And then have it kind of come around the edge. And now I'm going to go grab some of that really deep green. I think it's amazing how many colors are inside one single color of stamp, one single stamp pad. So leaving just one little area that would be where the sun is going to hit it is enough to, it's enough to help bring the eye around. And then I'm going to soften it and then pull some of those really bigger droplets. I'm going to pull them back toward the shaded areas. So I still have some different variation of color here. So moving on, this leaf is kind of dry now, so I'm going to give it another coating of water. And then squeeze the barrel. And then work that color out. And I want to keep an idea of where the highlight is going to be. So I'm going to push that color back to the place I applied it. And then I'll grab some more of the diluted and add it just along the edge of the leaf. So it looks like the leaf is curved by leaving some of that middle area uncolored. So now we can see by adding an even darker color to the edge that it looks like the leaf has got a natural curve to it. And then grab the really dark stuff and enhance that drawn line just a little bit, like so. So I'd love to hear if you have tried this method before and if you have found success. And if you have not found success, then please share how you feel like you could improve to be able to get the look that you want. Because the look that I want might not be the same look that you want. So I'm going right up to that stamped line. Placing color on that stamped line. And I'm softening this just a little bit. And then getting the concentrated stuff. And going back over the middle. And this is where the petal would kind of dip down a little bit. And softening that line a little bit too. So I want there to be some highlights. And then I'm going to bring the really dark granny apple green where this would kind of lay in the shadows. Anne-Marie, it's his practice. Practice is what has taught me the best, is being able to see how I can, like, just coming up with ideas of things that I can do that would give me the look that I want, and not being afraid to fail. That is probably one of my greatest setbacks, is once I was able to set myself up to where I'm okay if it doesn't look the way that I want it to, then I'm allowed to learn from the process. And that has been probably one of the things that's been most valuable in my lifetime of crafting and artwork, is don't be afraid to try and don't be afraid to fail. Because every time I fail, I might have something that looks good, might not be what I intended, but I can learn from that. So I'm quickly trying to go through here and add some of the color. And on these different buds that have like two pieces, I want them to be distinguished from one another. So I'm trying to make one of them much darker than the other. Yes, Anne-Marie, we learn each time. Each time. And then I can just dab off and maybe use a little bit of the lighter shade. So it really goes along with just having fun. So I created this card. This is the one that we are kind of, doing a little bit of, excuse me, mimicking the colors of. It was just because I was having a really, really stressful day with the kids, and I needed to get a few minutes to just collect myself. And so my husband took over for the kids and said to me, go off and do some work and get yourself calmed down. And this is how I often will do it, is I'll just start coloring. I'll start painting something. So that darker green goes in underneath where those leaves overlap one another. And it's okay to leave that white space there, just kind of soften it a little bit. And now I'm coming up on finishing most of this, and then we'll move on to the centers of the flower. So I know this is a bit of a longer video, and I do apologize, but I've had so many requests for help with no-line watercoloring, excuse me, that I wanted to be able to take the time to explain it. And this is one technique that takes some explaining as it happens. Okay, and then once this dries back a little bit, then we can go in with this darker color, just like we did with the Blackberry Bliss, and add a little bit more contours, something that would be natural. Now, another way you could go about coloring this would be to use some markers. When you're using the Stampin' Write markers, not the Stampin' Blends, but the Stampin' Write markers, then it's the same ink that's in your stamp pads. And that ink is going to come out in a more concentrated area. So that is always something that is going to bring success to. And then we've used the technique where we add the markers directly to the stamp, and that also combined with the watercolor paper is a really good way. I forgot 1/2 of the flower over here, so we're gonna color that little guy in. And if you see me turn my brush sometimes, it's because I find that the hairs of the aqua painter start leaning in one direction. So if I want them to lean back the other direction, then I just take my brush and I turn it. Okay, so now we can go into that middle area, and I'm going to make sure I get all of those colors off of the brush by squeezing the barrel and giving it some friction. Okay, now I'm going to bring up some of that ink to the stamp pad lid. And I'm not going to work in a lot of different tones for this. I'm just going to add it in dabs of just the really concentrated stuff. And leaving some of the white space is good. That means that I'm going to have some highlights. So I'm going to add kind of like in little circles. And then as it spreads out, it'll kind of work that concentration away from each individual little circle. But the lines on the stamp, they have those little circles. It's made up of little tiny circles. Okay, so I'm going to use now the really, really concentrated stuff and just dot it on, making sure that those little dots do not touch. So what that's going to do is it's going to give like a little bit of depth to the inside of the flower. So now we've got a really intense mango melody in certain places, and it's going to make it appear as if the inside of the flower there is not just a flat image. And leaving a little bit of white is okay again. So now we've got a little bit of depth that's starting to emerge. And I'm making sure to grab the parts of the stamp pad that are definitely straight ink, that are not diluted. All right, so now once we have all of the colors on, and this image is close enough to being finished to where I think we can move forward with it, then it's going to help to come away from the paper by doing a couple of different things. So I'm going to try more than one thing here so that we can keep it looking a different way. Anne Marie is asking what color. This is Blackberry Bliss, Soft Seafoam, and Granny Apple Green, and Mango Melody is the orange down in the middle. So now I have gray granite. So the first way that I want to show getting your image to jump off of the paper would be by adding a shadow. Now we can add blue to make it appear like a sky, but I want to bring just a little bit more of a shadow around everything. So just with the tip of my brush, I'm picking up some of the medium dilution. The darkest, heaviest concentration is back here, and this is more diluted. So I'm going like a midway, and I'm going to put my aqua painter right up against that stamped line. No pressure on the barrel at all. And I'm going to draw the very most narrow line around the petal. So I'm not adding any pressure whatsoever. In fact, I've moved my fingers way down here just to keep myself from accidentally squeezing out and adding water everywhere. So what happens is the definition of the petals is going to really happen now. So we've created all this color, but by adding this shadow, then we are given definition to what we've already created. And if I do it too thick, then it's not going to look natural. Okay, so there are other ways that we can do this as well, and I'll show those ways. One of them is with a marker, a Stampin' Up marker, okay? And this is smoky slate, and I'm going to use the bullet end, not the brush end, but the bullet end, and I'll go around the outside of this leaf here. And this is going to allow me to get a really fine line around the outside edge of the leaf. And I hope you can see exactly how well, and even this area here where it overlapped, I want it to appear as if it's standing up and not part of the other image. So this is with my Stampin' Up marker, and this is smoky slate, and I'm just going over it, and it's going to kind of help the image to not lay down as much. Now another way that this can happen is with a Stampin' Blends marker. And that's the alcohol-based marker, and this is light smoky slate. And I'm going to use the pointy end, that's the bullet end. And you can see that I'm just going to continue to go along here. And then you can even kind of fan it out with the color lifter if you like. Now the look that I like the best is with the aqua painter and just using some of the ink. And I'll tell you exactly why. Now it's not wrong to go either of these methods, but what I can do with this is, can you tell that this part of the flower petal is lighter? Well, I can use a much lighter gray here, and it will help. It'll help to have a deeper gray down here, and I can even reactivate that color and kind of, fan it out a little bit. But let's see how it works on this flower petal down here. So this is the lighter area of the petal, and this seems to be like it's going to be much more dark. So I'm going to start in the dark area and work my way around, and I can get a very thin line. I'm really happy with the line that I can get with the aqua painter. And then I'll go back and kind of spread that out. See, now this is what I can do that I can't do with those other two methods. So if you're going to go to the trouble of creating an image, then I like to go to the trouble of finishing it off. So while it's still wet, dab off that extra color and then just fan out that gray straight out away from it. And so it's going to give itself a bit of a shadow. So this is what the drop shadow would look like versus this, this, and this. So we've given 4 different ways. Yes, you're right, Sharon. It is softer around the edges. Now, another thing to consider is just adding a shadow on one side of your object. So that would mean that, like, this is the top part where the sun would most hit it. So let's give the shadow only on the bottom side. Fan it out just a tiny bit. And this one is underneath, so it's going to be even darker. This is what I like to do, is just give a drop shadow if possible. So now it appears that this flower petal is almost not a part of the paper, like it's above the paper. Can you see what the difference is? Is tremendous difference. Okay, for the sake of time, because I know that we've been at this a very long time, and for the sake of time, I'm going to stop working on this image, and we can turn it into a card very, very quickly. So now I'm going to take this painter's or this washi tape, and I'm going to pull it away at a really sharp angle. And yes, sometimes I resave this, and I use it like for die cuts if I'm going to need to secure a die cut in place. As long as I pull it off at a really sharp angle, and because we took some of that tackiness away, then it's not going to be bothered. So now I can really, really quickly make it into a card. I apologize for how long this is going on, but I thought this technique would be well worth our time today to be able to get the look that so many of you are asking for. So I'm bringing the Big Shot over, and because we're working with the Blended Seasons bundle, part of that bundle is the Stitch Seasons framelits. I'll use the medium-sized double stitch. And it's not going to cut out the whole image. And you know what? That's okay. Let me get this in camera as best as I can. So what I try to do is see what is going to look best. So if I have this turned on my paper, let's go. This is what it would look like if you cut off this part. And this is what it would look like if we try to get some white space on the opposite side. So this is the way I think it would look best. This is kind of the look that I went for on the other version of the card. So I'm going to put this in place. I really hope that you try it, Nicola, and I would love to see what your results are. If you're petrified to try it, then look at it this way. How are you going to lose? By practicing, how are you winning and how are you losing? And I'd hate to use that word lose, but if you practice and you like it or you learn something new along the way, then there's nothing lost. Okay, so this is going to be our little panel, and this is just a scrap that's going to go into my scrap bin. And I know there has got to be someone out there that is horrified that I die cut this panel. But by cutting it down, we're able to have it a really manageable size for our card. Here, you can see. And so I've taken the image and we're able to really let it work its magic. And use these Stampin' Dimensionals. Now there's one more thing that I wanted to show about this project that I created. And this is, again, we're recreating the coloring on this card. I had a lot of questions about this sentiment. And this sentiment is on the Wood Textures Designer Series paper, and it is embossed in white. And this is one of the sentiments from Blended Seasons. So if I hold them side by side, you can see that there is a difference, right? I wanted to set the top line apart from the bottom line. So I'll show you exactly how I did that. And this is the Early Espresso marker, the Stampin' Right marker. So for those of us that have the Stampin' Right markers and use them, we know what an asset they are. And they're like a companion to our stamp pads. They don't take the place of our stamp pads. They work to help us with them. So I'm going to take this marker and I'm going to color just on the right hand side. I'm going to have this be my drop shadow right here. Okay, so my light source is up here and this is my drop shadow. So I'm going to take this brown marker and I'm going to enhance everything that would be down here as far as how the light would hit it. So that means that I'm going to add it just in certain places. And by doing that, I'm going to create dimension on this little, simple, tiny sentiment. It's going to jump off the page so much more. So I'm just going into those areas. Some of the time it's going to be like this whole bottom line that gets enhanced, and that's okay. So that would be the inside and the outside of the different images. Now the C here, the capital C, I don't want it to have on the outside bow of the C or the inside curve of the C, but by adding that to the inside just in certain areas, I'm able to create that look of dimension. So see what a difference that makes already? I think it's amazing what we can do with the markers. So now we're able to do something with our sentiment, and I think that it might look nice just to have it at an angle off to the side. I think that'll work. So this is just a little something extra that you can add to just about any project. And I'm going to kind of make this in between here. And then for details, I'd like to show you the frosted and clear epoxy droplets. These little guys here are just stunning. And this is the frosted ones, and these are the shiny, shiny ones. I'm going to use the shiny ones, and I'll use the spatula end of the new Take Your Pick tool. So you can see that this is flexible, but it's really sturdy. And it's perfect for sliding underneath so that I can place these little dots. Now, does this take the place of my paper piercing tool with the mini glue dot on the end? I don't know, because I really, really like using that mini glue dot on the end. It works so well for me. This is going to be like a multi-purpose tool in so many different ways. So I'm just going to add, how about to the outside area here? Add a few of these. It kind of moves around. I'm going to have to get used to using this tool because I'm not familiar with how it's going to work. But just adding some of these little beautiful droplets is going to really make a difference. So it kind of brings the eye around. And I showed in my my catalog preview how to change the end here. There's a lock and an unlock symbol. So if you twist this end to the unlock position, then you're able to remove it and change out into a different attachment. And then it would just go back in and then turn to the locked position. And that's how the take your pick tool works. So for the inside of the card, we're going to finish this whole project off with something inside as well. I'll go back to the stamp set. And we've got some really pretty stuff to choose from. But I want to kind of go with the same image that we have that has that no line look. So that is going to be this little branch image here. I'm going to use that same base that I used of smoky slate and do a little bit of a trick with it. So I'm going to do smoky slate. And then use the Granny Apple Green. And I'm going to stamp down really close to it, but offset it just a little bit. So I'm going to see this is where it would normally lie. And then I'm going to offset it just enough. So it's like an optical illusion. Oh, that didn't work out as good. I was too far away. That's okay. So we'll just fix it by continuing. Make it look like it's fading out. So that's the whole thing about trying and failing and trying and having it not work out. It's okay. It all works out in the end. So now I'm going to adhere this to the inside of the card. And we have created a card that we've kind of took the mystery out of the no line watercoloring. So this is much more simple on the inside of the card. So that's going to allow some place for our eyes to kind of rest, although this is a little busy here. But we created this very beautiful image with the Blended Seasons bundle, and it is limited time. So please, if you like this bundle, then don't hesitate. Just get it and add it to your craft supplies. Now, if you have any questions of what we created, and I'll give you a much closer look here, then please put a question in the comments and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thank you, Sharon. Thanks, Nicola. I really like this way